Hiraji was a pushover homeroom teacher until he snapped and trapped his students in class for 10 days, putting them through hell. It all started on a typical school day when Hiraji received a mysterious number of packages and began preparing himself for some big event. When he got to class, he told the little dickheads to settle down while he slid the door shut and told them they were all his hostages. No one believed him at first, but when they saw they really couldn't get out, 3 of the boys tried to beat the delusion out of him. However, he finally showed his true colors when he single-handedly clapped them and almost put a knife through one guy's head. To prove how serious he was, he had activated a bomb that blew up a part of the school, trapping them from escaping. Then he opened the doors to let them see. There he explained that there were bombs all over the school and forced them to take their seats if they understood. While the rest of the school ran for their lives, Hiraji began seizing all their phones so they couldn't contact anyone and even caught the sneaky ones hiding 2 phones. After the bell for first period rang, so Hiraji told his class to get up and bow, but when they tried to resist, he pointed to the bomb control on his wrist, and they immediately got the message and cooperated. Finally, Hiraji starts his class by asking why they think they're in this mess in the first place. They initially act dumb, but when Hiraji sits at one of the desks, Sakura finally speaks up and says it must be about their dead classmate Reina, and Hiraji confirms this. Hayato insists that since Reina unalived herself, it doesn't have anything to do with them, but Hiraji tells them someone in their class is responsible for her death, and for their first task, they have to figure out why she died before 8 p.m. If they give him a wrong answer, one of them will have to die, so they know he's serious. He then picks Sakura as the one to deliver the answer and leaves the class so they can think. Sakura chases after him and demands to know why he picked her, so he reminds her that they were friends. Sakura insists that Reina didn't think of her that way since that's what she wrote in her letter before she died. However, Hiraji points out that she was the only one who even got a letter. Back in the classroom, the students try calling out for help, but Hiraji tells them it's hopeless thanks to the special windows he installed and the camera he uses to watch them. Meanwhile, the teachers outside wonder what's going on with Class 2A, so Yamato calls Hiraji to make sure they're okay. But Hiraji casually informs him that he's taking the students hostage and is barricading himself. Somewhere in town, 2 detectives are in the middle of apprehending a criminal when they get word of the hostage situation in the school. When they arrive, the principal assumes the attention-seeking weirdo. Yamato must have called them, but in a shocking twist, they reveal it was Hiraji himself. Suddenly, Hiraji calls out on the speakers and warns them not to make any moves till he says so. Then he blows up a phone booth so they know what will happen if they do. Back in the class, the kids bicker among themselves about how they could possibly know why she died. So they turn to Sakura, who was apparently her closest friend. Sakura denies being her friend even though it couldn't be further from the truth. She remembers how she basically stalked Riina with a camera till Riina somehow decided to be friends with her, and though they were as different as night and day, they were inseparable. In the present, some of the students suggest that she offed herself because she was caught doping for her last swim competition, but the girl on the swim team refuses the blame and tells Sakura not to say anything stupid. Sakura runs to the bathroom to think, and there, she pulls out Rina's last letter to her saying she couldn't be her friend anymore. That evening, more detectives arrive on site as word of the incident continues to spread like middle school gossip thanks to Yamato opening his giant mouth, so a special police squad begins to invade the school. Meanwhile, Hiraji returns to the class to ask what Sakura's answer is, so the whole class tells her to blame it on Riina being caught doping. However, when Hiraji asks if that's really what Sakura believes, Sakura changes her mind and says she was the one that caused her death. After Riina had been accused of doping, the whole class treated her like leprosy and advised her to do the same. So when Sakura found a letter from Riina saying they couldn't be friends anymore, Sakura simply went with it and ignored her too. However, now she realizes that the smudge on the letter meant that Riina was crying when she wrote it, which means it wasn't true. Surprisingly, Hiraji says that was the wrong answer, which means someone has to die. This sparks outrage among the students who try to jump him a second time, causing him to detonate another bomb, reminding them of his boss. Desperate to save their own skins, the kids suggest Sakura should be the one to die since she gave the wrong answer. Hiraji calls the entire class trash for being so quick to doom one of their classmates and begs them to change their ways when an intruder alert suddenly goes off. He tells the police that since they've broken his terms, we'll have to end one of the students. He picks Ren and proceeds to beat him up for all the teachers and detectives to end. Then after knocking him out, he plunges a knife into him and ends it. The students watch in horror as he calls it the end of their lesson and drags Ren's body away. Outside, the worried parents demand to know whose kid died, while Gunji notices a suspicious man standing off to the side. Hiraji then made another announcement saying the event would be broadcast on Mind Voice, so he wants all the registered users to pay 500 yen as a viewing fee, which should amount to 5 billion yen. The next day, Yamato continues to hog the spotlight and updates TV reporters on the state of things with literal crocodile tears. Ren's parents are told the news about their son's potential death, while the cops continue to wonder why Hiraji is publicizing the case. Hiraji calls Yamato again and tells him to hand the phone to Gunji. Then he tells Gunji that he's only raised 40,000 yen, so more people need to pay attention to their case. Later, two of the students go to beg Hiraji for Japanese food when they notice something interesting behind him. They head back to class, and when Hiraji joins them, he says they'll be picking up right where they left off yesterday. He then reveals an account on Mind Voice he found that was obsessively posting about Reina and ended up posting the video of her seemingly doping. However, Hiraji tells them that even though the video was fake, that was the real reason why Reina offed herself. He reveals that the person who owns the account is right in that class, and if they don't confess who they are by 8 p.m., another student will die. Meanwhile, the detectives meet with the principal to find out more about Hiraji. So the principal says Hiraji had a history of violence with his ex-girlfriend, who was also a teacher at their school, but now suffers from mental illness. Back at the school, the two boys tell the class that Ren is probably not dead since they didn't see his body or smell it decaying, so Hiraji's just trying to scare them into cooperating. With this, Kai offers to steal the remote so they can escape, while the girls keep trying to figure out who the culprit is. Ko looks over at Sakura and sees her pull out a towel and discovers she got it from Reina. She walks off sadly, remembering that she had given Reina the exact same type. But since Reina felt she only wanted to be friends because of her achievements, Reina gave it back and left. After the boys head to the bathroom, hoping to beat the shit out of Hiraji, while another group of boys head to the prep room to check for Ren. However, they discover the door is electrified, and it sets off an alarm, causing an exhausted, bloody Hiraji to appear and warn them not to take any other action or they'll receive a penalty. Meanwhile, Detective Gunji heads over to Hiraji's ex, Fumika's house, to meet with her father. When they ask if Fumika ended up like that because of Hiraji, he simply says Hiraji is a horrible human being. Back in the classroom of doom, the students start throwing suspicions around about who the culprit might be, so Yuzuki points out that Kalo used to be close friends with Reina. But Kalo quickly deflects and says it's none of their business. Hiraji returns to the class to ask who the culprit is, but when they don't turn anyone over, he decides to pick his next victim. Suddenly, he gets a phone call from Fumika, but when he sees it's actually Gunji using her phone, he demands to know what they spoke about and why he has her phone. Now that he's distracted, the boys jump him again, and this time, they successfully take the watch off him and proceed to beat him up again, but another bomb suddenly goes off, making them retreat in fear. Hiraji tells them that the watch they took was a fake, while he pulls out the real one and tells them to form a line at the back of the class. He tells them they'd all have to die for pulling that stunt, but Kai insists that he's bluffing and wouldn't actually kill them. But before he can call this bluff, Kazuki stops him and begs the culprit to confess instead so no one will get hurt. When Sakura looks over at Koo, she decides to confess to the crime, but when Hiraji asks for the Mind Voice password, she draws a blank. Suddenly, Koo confesses that she's the real culprit and is able to supply the correct password. Then she turns to Sakura and accuses her of stealing Reina away from her. In a rage, she stalked Reina and harassed her, and when she found the doping DVD in her bag, she decided to post it. Hiraji scolds Kavo for being scum, and when Ko breaks down crying, Sakura hands her the towel and tells her that Reina had always thought of her as her friend. The students ask Hiraji if they can leave now that the mystery is solved, but he tells them that since someone else put the DVD in her bag, they have to find out who. He heads back to the classroom, but Kai and the guys follow after to ask where Ren really is, so Hiraji pulls out a fake hand and convinces them it's Ren's, which makes them run off. He then calls the police and demands they bring food for all of them, so Toro offers to go himself, and when he gets to the school, he finally meets Hiraji. Gunji listens in with the wire Toro's wearing, so Hiraji points out the wire and begins to tell him to stop it before the line disconnects. In reality, Toro is actually Hiraji's accomplice, and the two sit down to discuss. Toro warns Hiraji that Gunji's pretty good at his job, and the visit to Fumika's house might become a problem. After they finish discussing, Tora tells Hiraji to punch him in the face so it looks believable. When Tora returns to the station with a bruised face, he tells Gunji that Hiraji will have a present for him the following day. The next day, Hiraji starts his twisted lesson by showing the kids the doping video once again. Then he calls Gunji on the phone and tells him that this time, you'll have to figure out who made the fake video or 5 people will die. The detectives get to work and begin consulting one of the teachers who tells them that the culprit is probably someone from the swim team, since they had on their jersey. Back in class, the blame gets passed around like a bad flu and eventually lands on Karen, Raina's biggest rival, and Kakeru, the club manager. When things get heated, Ko interrupts and says deciding solely based on the jersey is a risky move. But everyone reminds her they're only in this mess because of her, causing her to leave the class. Sakura follows after her like a shadow, and when they get to the bathroom, Ko asks Sakura if she remembers seeing any student other than the swimming club members at the national competition, which makes Reina remember something. Meanwhile, Gunji analyzes the video and notices a stain on the jersey when another detective rushes in and informs them that details about the case are getting leaked on Mind Voice. They decide to message the person leaking, and it turns out to be a student from the class, so they ask him to cooperate with them. At the same time, Takahiko watches a new report about the hostage situation and turns it off when Fumika walks in, but when he leaves, she turns it on and finally discovers what's going on. Back at school, Kakeru confronts Karen for hating Reina because he liked Reina instead of her. But Karen insists she has no feelings for a useless guy like him. In the past, all 3 of them had hung out as friends, but one day, Kakeru got attacked by some thugs who thought he was her boyfriend, which landed him in the hospital. There, Reina went to thank him for protecting Reina, since the thugs who used to harass her had now been caught. Then she suggested he become manager of the swim team to continue to protect her. In the present, Sakura and Ko do some digging and confirm that one of their classmates, Satomi, was present at the competition and was wearing one of their jerseys. When they confront him with this, Kakeru admits that he had borrowed his jersey, and suspicion quickly falls on Satomi. However, Satomi denies the allegations and Kai tells them they're wasting their time since it's the detective's job to answer. Meanwhile, Gunji goes to the swimming arena to ask if the desk lady saw Karen or Kakeru. But when he gets a tip from the mole about Satomi, he shows her his picture, and she immediately recognizes it. Later, Gunji sits with the other teachers as they have dinner and gets an idea about the stain on the jersey. He tells the mole to ask the suspects what they had for lunch that day, and after a while, Gunji gets his answer. That evening, Hiraji returns to the class to get his answer and tries asking directly for the culprit. But when no one fesses up, he calls the detectives for his answer. Gunji narrows it down to Satomi and Karen, and based on what they had for lunch, he chooses Karen, who insists she is innocent. Hiraji laughs and reveals that the mole is actually his accomplice who fed him the wrong information, which means the real culprit is Satomi after all. Sakura asks him why he would do such a thing, and he confesses that he had confessed to Reina, but she rejected him. So when he got a message telling him to make the video of her, he agreed. Hiraji scolds him for wanting to see his own crush suffer, so Satomi breaks down and admits that he was ashamed to lose to Kakeru of all people, and tells him to hit him to make up for it. But Kakeru refuses. Hiraji interrupts the drama and points a gun at the class, reminding them that 5 people need to die. When Gunji hears this, he tries to rush over to the school to do something. But before he can, Hiraji calls 5 students out of the class and sets off a bomb. When the students see their bodies under the rubble, they start to panic while Gunji himself screams in frustration. Hiraji uses a speaker to tell him it's all his fault, expecting him to be angry. But Gunji says he has more hope than before that he'll surely put Hiraji in handcuffs. News about the 5 dead students begins to spread on Mind Voice, and this time, Fumika hears about it in real time. Meanwhile, the 5 students wake up in a strange room and are surprised to see that Ren's still alive, while Hiraji walks in to explain the truth. The next morning, Sakura tries to tell her classmates that she had heard voices coming from below last night, but everyone assumes she must be high on her own armpit stench. Speaking of stench, the other classmates begin to avoid Hana for stinking up the place, but Ken defends her when he says it's unfair since no one has showered for 4 days. Hiraji walks in excited to continue their lessons. Then he points out that from Satomi's confession, there was a mastermind who told him to make the video and even edited it. With that, Hiraji asks the person responsible to confess, and this time, Kai raises his hand and admits to it. The other students give him hell for being a murderer, but he tells Hiraji to let them go now that he knows the truth. However, Hiraji points out that even if he did part of the dirty work, the video was too well edited for Kai to have done it himself. Hiraji tells him he has till 8 p.m. to confess who the real mastermind behind it was, or 10 more students will die this time. Meanwhile, the teachers and detectives get swarmed by concerned parents wanting to know who's got to pay for funeral expenses now, but the cops usher them away so they can do their jobs properly. Suddenly, 2 kids walk up and say they got a tip that since their brother has been held hostage, one of the teachers would help them take care of their mom as she's paralyzed. When the teachers ask who their brother is, they reveal that it's Kai. At the same time, Toro calls Hiraji and tells him that the investigation is getting more serious, which means he won't be able to help further. He then asks about Hiraji's health, and though Hiraji says that he's fine, he appears to be struggling to stand. Meanwhile, Gunji's been taken off the Hiraji case and is back to interrogating the loser be caught before the case, Kishi. Kishi claims he's innocent, so Gunji suddenly asks him what Bermuzu is, but he claims he's never heard of it. Another detective interrupts and tells Gunji he has a visitor, and it turns out to be Fumika, who asks for her damn phone back. While she's there, she tells Gunji that Hiraji might be doing all of this because of her, but before Gunji can ask her more questions, her dad shows up and reminds him of their agreement to leave her out of it. As they leave, Fumika overhears another detective mentioning something about Bermuzu, which shocks her as she's mentioned them before in an old interview. Back in school, one of the classmates tells Sakura and Koho of an incident when Kai protected Rina from some thugs, so Sakura confronts him about this and thanks him for helping her, but when she tries to ask about the mastermind, he storms off. Some of the students tell her that she's just made the situation worse, but now that Hannah stinks, she comes to her defense and offers to cooperate with her along with her friend. Together, the 4 of them head outside the classroom while Sakura tells them something important. Meanwhile, some teachers follow the kids home and find that their mom really is paralyzed. They help take care of them, and she thanks them, admitting that when she lost her legs, all the responsibility fell on Kai, causing him to quit dancing so he could make money and take care of them. Later, the teachers are shocked to learn this about Kai, since they thought he was just a little shithead, which makes them wonder if they failed as teachers. At the same time, Kai remembers one of the Bermuza thugs asking him to set up Rina in exchange for money, so he can return to dancing, but when the day came, Kai couldn't go through with it, and helped Rina escape while he fought off the thugs himself. In the present, Hiraji confronts Kai and tells him he knows about his family's situation, but he starts to struggle to stand up, making Kai guess that something isn't right. Hiraji returns to the art room, where he gets a call from Fumika, but ignores it thinking it's Gunji. But when he plays a voicemail from her, she asks him to stop what he's doing if it's for her, but Hiraji resolves that he's doing it for himself. Later, Hiraji returns to the class to ask Kai for his answer, but Kai suggests they fight it out, and if Hiraji wins, he'll tell him everything, but if Kai wins, Hiraji must let them go. Hiraji reminds him that he's consistently whooped his ass up till now, but Kai points out his shaky health and tells him to bring it on. Hiraji secretly dials Gunji's number so he can listen in. Then they start the fight and Hiraji starts revealing Kei's situation as he smacks him up, demanding to know why he would save someone he set up. Kai manages to get the upper hand and begins a punching spree, so Hiraji reveals that Kai was jealous of Rina all along, and Kai admits to it, saying it's not fair that he didn't get to do what he wanted. Hiraji regains control and smacks some sense into Kai as he tells him he should have asked for help and told his classmates or anyone that he wanted to dance. Kai finally gives up and confesses that his family was being threatened by the Bermuza gang not to give up their leader, so Hiraji tells him he can trust him, which is ironic since he's a murderer. However, Sakura tells the class that she snuck out to check the prep room, and there, Ken called out from inside and told her to trust Hiraji, which means none of the students are dead. With this, Kai reveals that the leader of Bermuzu is Kishi, and even throws in their hideout location, so when Gunji hears this, he goes to investigate, and just as Kai said, he finds their hideout in the back, so they beat up the thugs and handcuff Kishi. Hiraji confirms that Kishi has been arrested, which shocks Yuzuki, who's holding a pendant from Kishi, and tells Kai that his family is safe while his mother will be taken to a nursing home. Then he gives him a speech about doing better next time, which moves everyone to tears. After, the students begin asking what happened to the other classmates, so Hiraji agrees to tell them the truth, but before he can, he suddenly collapses on the floor. Sakura begins looking after Hiraji, while the rest of the students try to break into the prep room so they can find the others and get their cell phones. Hiraji's phone begins to ring, and when Sakura picks it, Toro asks if everything is going to plan, but when Sakura replies, he cuts the phone and wonders what's going on. Another student grabs the phone from her so he can call for help, but when they wonder if the phone is rigged to set off a bomb, they lose the idea on the spot. At that moment, a student rushes in to inform them that the prep room has been opened, so they all head in and look around, but Hiroki suddenly reveals that he's the accomplice and tells them to head back to the classroom as he shows them another control for the bomb. However, the boys see him as small fry and simply grab the control from him, knowing he can't actually hurt them. They force him to open a door on the floor while one of the students calls his dad and tells him that everything is a lie and they should send for the police. The students finally get their phones back and discover the missing students downstairs, but when they begin planning to escape, Ren tells them to consider staying behind. He then tells them how Hiraji had explained that he was trying to bring the truth about Rana's murder to light, as the rest of the students might still be in danger. He admits that he suffers from an incurable disease and doesn't have much time left, which is why he's trying to teach them important lessons before he goes. When the students wonder what to do next, one of the captives says that Yuzuki holds the key, but Yuzuki denies having anything to do with Kishi and walks off. In reality, Yuzuki was Kishi's girlfriend. She had cut a deal with him to be his girl in return for money so she could be on the covers of famous magazines as her model. One day, he handed her a necklace and asked her to take good care of it, and she's held on to it till this day. Meanwhile, the rest of the students are divided on whether to stay in school or leave, but now that the police are on their way, they don't have much time. The officers finally arrive and a fight breaks out between the students on what they should do, so Kai threatens to activate a bomb to ward them off. But before he can do anything reckless, Hiraji appears with Sakura and tells them to leave it to him. He confronts Yuzuki about her relationship with Kishi, and surprisingly doesn't blame her for wanting to keep the fame she's found. So this moves her to tears, and she reveals the card that was hidden inside the necklace and hands it to Hiraji. When Hiraji accesses it, he finds the customer list for Bermuzu, which reveals that the person who ordered a hit on Reina was a teacher from their school. The students are shocked to hear this, and Hiraji assures them that they need to remain in there so he can find out who it is and protect them from becoming the next victims. With this, the students agree to cooperate and let Hiraji handle the police. So Hiraji heads downstairs and tells the cops that the information from the children was all part of a plan set up by him. He begins to struggle to stand but manages to tell them to leave and activates a bomb, threatening to end all the kids if they don't, so Tora tells them to fall back. After, the information about the culprit being one of the teachers gets leaked on Mind Voice along with the Bermuzu client list, causing an uproar among the teachers as to who it could possibly be. The next day, Hiraji began another lesson with this class, but this time it was a game of Believe It or Not. When Sakura asked what the heck that meant, he simply repeated the statement, but this time taking off his glasses before the second part. Afterward, Hiraji took a picture with the students and posted it online to prove that the students were still alive. So the whole of Mind Voice went crazy, debating on what he was trying to do this whole time, even to the point of calling him a hero. Meanwhile, the students enjoyed the remaining days showering, eating, and watching videos of knockoff Power Rangers. Later, Hiraji confronted the class about another post on Mind Voice, showing the fake body parts he used to deceive them. When the girl responsible fessed up about doing it for the attention, Hiraji took off his glasses and decided to make things more exciting. He called up the teachers who were still panicking over his last post and told them that the culprit behind the fake video should fess up before 8 p.m. or he'd blow up the whole class. After cutting the phone, the students tried to ask if he was just joking, but he said he was dead serious and even seized their phones all over again. Then he puts his glasses back on and tells them not to look at things from the surface, but instead think carefully. On his way out, one of the students asks to assist with carrying the bag of phones, and when Hiraji's not looking, she steals hers back. Back in class, Sakura leads the class to try and figure out who the teacher responsible is. When they get to the swim teacher, Yuzuki asks Suzune about her opinion since she used to be on the team. And that's when Suzune confesses that he's an awful man who kicked her off the team just for dating Ren. She goes to the bathroom to cry about it, and while she's there, Misaki walks in with her phone. She instantly begs Suzune not to rat her out, so Suzune blackmails her into doing something for her in exchange for her silence. Meanwhile, Sakura goes to check on Hiraji when she sees him watching Misaki and Suzune in the bathroom. There, Misaki records Suzune accusing the gym teacher of abusing her, and then she tells Misaki to upload it so she can get more followers. Meanwhile, Gunji tracks down Hiraji's old part-time job as a budget Power Ranger and talks to his former colleague, who tells them that Hiraji quit cause he got cancer and wanted to take the same path as Fumika as a teacher. When Gunji asks how he knows Fumika, Gunji says she's their president's daughter, so Gunji shows him a picture of fake body parts and asks if their company produces them. Later, Hiraji returns to the class to confront Suzune about the video she made, which is causing an outage against the teacher online. When she sticks to her story, Hiraji decides to call the teachers so Suzune can confront the gym teacher directly. When she does, she accuses him of taking away something precious from her, so the principal tells him to finally tell her the truth. That's when he reveals that a doctor had told him and her mom about a heart condition she had developed from excessive training, which could cause cardiac arrest. After learning about her condition, her mother had begged him to get her off the team, but since he couldn't think of any better way to do it, he used the excuse of her relationship to persuade her. Just as Suzune begins to tear up, Hiraji slams the laptop and asks her if she still suspects the gym teacher as the culprit. She says no and feels bad about posting the lies about him on Mind Voice, so Hiraji reveals that he stopped Misaki from posting it and told her to pretend she had. Suzune heaves a sigh of relief, but Hiraji throws her to the floor and reminds her she was literally about to destroy a man's life for nothing. Once again, he tries to drum into their thick-ass skulls to think before making such rash decisions, and the whole class just stares in stunned silence. Afterward, Hiraji removes his glasses and calls the teachers back, telling them that since they failed the task, he'd be blowing up the class now. He shows them the students as he locks them in, and they beg to get out. The feed cuts off and all they hear is a loud bang, and when they run out, they see the class on fire and start to panic. However, Hiraji tells them he was just kidding, but now, the internet thinks they're trash for protecting themselves instead of their students. Inside, the students think that Hiraji is being especially cruel, so Sakura tells them that they've been playing the game of Believe It or Not this entire time, and Hiraji had been lying whenever he took off his glasses. Meanwhile, Gunji confirms that Takahiko had recently purchased fake body parts, which means that he and Hiraji are definitely connected. At that moment, Takahiko uploads a video of one of the teachers following Riina into a building on the day that she died, and Hiraji reveals that the teacher in question is Hamato. Yamato denies the allegations and asks what evidence he has to prove this, but Hiraji assures him that the internet will soon provide it. Meanwhile, the internet continues to go crazy as opinions are split on whether Yamato is really guilty or not, and people even start rallying behind him to show their support. Fumika follows the whole thing on the TV, and though her dad tells her she doesn't have to, she insists that she can't keep pretending not to know anything. Back in the school, Hiraji watches a video of Fumika confessing that it was Bermuzu that made the fake video because she heard it from Yamato. Then he watches a similar video of Reina telling him she was about to meet with the person responsible for the video. The next day, Hiraji starts his class, and when the students ask if Yamato is really the culprit, he suggests they ask him directly. He then calls Yamato, who insists that the video doesn't even show who the man is. But Hiraji tells him that he has till 8 p.m. to confess, or he'll take away the thing he loves the most. When Hiraji hangs up, he shows the class the video of Reina saying she was going to meet with the culprit, who was a teacher at the school, but confesses that he doesn't have any hard evidence to prove it was Yamato. Seo immediately starts accusing him of putting on this elaborate show for a baseless accusation, and Hana chips in and says she doesn't think Yamato is guilty either. When the students wonder why they're defending Yamato, Karen reveals that they were both getting sports recommendation letters from Yamato to go to a university. Hiraji hands Seo the laptop to try and prove Yamato's innocence and leaves, so the students gather around, hoping to use a software that increases video resolution. While they're at it, one of the other students tells Seo and Hana that many of the students that Yamato recommends end up dropping out or developing mental illness because they weren't recommended on their actual ability and couldn't keep up. However, Seo says that he's prepared and storms off, remembering how hard he and Hana had been training with no luck till Yamato offered to recommend them anyway. The internet continues its own investigation of the video, pointing out several similarities between the culprit and Yamato. Meanwhile, Takahiko contacts Hiraji and tells him about the cop's visit to the studio, stating that he doesn't regret his involvement since it's for his daughter. At the same time, Gunji continues to look into Fumika and wonders what the cause of her mental illness is since her mom died ages ago. His partner then points out that Fumika is actually only biologically her mom's daughter from her first marriage, but Takahiko is not her biological father. Back at school, the students continue processing the image while Seo goes off to the side, plotting how to take out Hiraji since he's weak. Later, when Hiraji is in the prep room, Seo and his goons attack him so they can find the key to the lock and leave. The commotion causes Kai and the other students to come to Hiraji's aid and stop them, while they try and convince Seo and Hana not to be so quick to accept a recommendation from such a person. Later, Yamato receives a call from Hiraji to meet with him alone, so the men meet downstairs and Yamato continues to deny having any involvement in the issue. Hiraji plays a recording of Yamato admitting to the allegation, explaining that he had wiretapped his phone, but Yamato calls his evidence bullshit, especially since it's illegal to wiretap phones. There he revealed the truth about Yamato trying to force Rina into taking a recommendation for Gosho University so that he could receive a large reward. However, after she heard about the students he recommended that were failing and forced to drop out, Rina refused his officer and threatened to file a report to the Minister of Education. Because of that, Yamato had Bermuzo make that fake video of her, which ruined her reputation. But when he went to meet her concerning the video, a security camera caught them. Yamato continues to deny this when Hiraji finally pulls up the enhanced image, which clearly shows Yamato's face. This shocks Yamato, who finally admits to arranging for the fake video, but swears that he really didn't follow Reina into any building. However, Hiraji reveals that their entire conversation was actually being live-streamed on Mind Voice, and they just heard his confession. Hiraji reminds him that he said he'd take what was most precious to him, which was his fame and power. At that point, Yamato loses it and starts ranting about not caring about those dumb kids. So Hiraji scolds him and says that teachers are supposed to believe in their students' futures, and he's sad that he won't get to see theirs. As the students listen in, they tear up at Hiraji's words, and Seo and Hana are determined to not give up on their dreams even without Yamato. Tora shows up to take Yamato away while Hiraji goes back to the students, but when Gunji shows up later, he accuses Toro of being Hiraji's accomplice. The next day, Yamato is interrogated by the police who show him videos of his fellow teachers agreeing he must be guilty, but Yamato refuses to speak without a lawyer. When Gunji calls in, his partner asks how it went with Tora, but apparently, Tora told him he'd need hard evidence to drag him down, which Gunji plans on getting that day. Meanwhile, Hiraji holds his class for the day, and when the students ask why they're still there at all, he tells them that his goal isn't about the ransom money or the culprit. He then declares the class a self-study class and hands them back their phones and bags, saying they're now free to post anything they want. He warns them not to implicate themselves as his accomplices, and then gives them an exercise to practice any time they want to make an important decision. At the same time, Gunji manages to meet with Fumika secretly and asks her what exactly her connection is to Yamato. Fumika explains that Yamato had once tried to bribe her into forcing a student for a recommendation to Gosho University. So when she looked into why he was doing this, she discovered he was connected to someone else. Back in school, Yuzuki sneaks off to the bathroom to call Kishi one last time and thank him for not getting her involved in the Rian incident. But unknown to her, the message is being listened to by Kishi and the detective. After the message, Kishi admits that Yamato really was the person who told them to make the video, but he's also being controlled by someone even more powerful. Meanwhile, the man from the studio goes to see Takahiko and tells him he knows he's been cooperating with Hiraji this whole time, cause the rest of the staff squealed when he asked them. So Takahiko assures him the studio won't get in trouble, but the problem is bigger than just Fumika. Back at the school, the students go back to horsing around and talking to their family members, but one of them continues to analyze the video of Yamato and Rina more closely and discovers something shocking. Meanwhile, Hiraji receives a phone call from Tanaka, who asks why Hiraji dragged their boss into his mess. So Hiraji says he's just trying to protect children's dreams and encourages Tanaka to remain a hero forever. At the station, Gunji interrogates Yamato and says that Rina's fake video is not the first time he'd pulled that stunt, because he had done the same thing to Fumika, who had discovered his arrangement with the Minister of Education and threatened to expose him. Yamato still tries to deny the charges, claiming they don't have any evidence, but when the other detective walks in, he says Kinshi has confessed to everything, which means Yamato is screwed. Back in school, the girl shows the rest of the class what she discovered, and to their surprise, they see that the man in the video is actually Hiraji. Hiraji walks in, and they instantly begin questioning him about it, but he simply leaves them to judge what to do. When he leaves, Sakura follows after to get some answers, but they're interrupted when he gets a call from Tora. When he picks up, he hears Gunji confronting Tora about Fumika being his biological daughter, and asking why they didn't turn Yamato in sooner. Tora insists that their enemy is bigger than just Yamato or even the middle of education, but before he can explain, some other officers come to take him away as Gunji's partner already ratted him out. Back at school, one of the students tries to leak the news of the video being fake, but the rest of the students remind him that could destroy Hiraji's life. That's when someone else points out that the video is weird. That day, Reina was with her swimming bag, not the bag that shows up in the other video, which means that the girl isn't Reina at all. They eventually realize it's a fake video, just like the ones Yamato set up, which means Hiraji was giving a taste of his own medicine. The student tries to upload this to Mind Voice, but they stop him and remind him to think before acting. As Hiraji and Sakura watch from the prep room, Hiraji starts to tear up as he realizes that his message has finally reached his student, so Sakura hands him a towel to wipe his proud tears. Meanwhile, the cops send a unit to infiltrate the school now that they know Hiraji's just full of shit. After the students calm down, they go to check on Hiraji, but Sakura informs them that he's gone downstairs to confront Gunji. There, Hiraji tells Gunji he'll be his next hostage, but Gunji has no intention of going down easily, so the two fight it out, but Gunji gets the upper hand and beats Hiraji to a pulp. But just when all hope seems lost, Tanaka arrives in his Power Rangers suit. Gunji couldn't have guessed that he'd get his ass kicked by a guy in a Power Rangers suit, but it was even worse as he got knocked flat out. The cops advance on the school, but before they can make a full entry, Hiraji calls them and says he's taking Gunji hostage, sending a picture as proof. So the cops call of the raid and Hiraji tells them he'd contact them the next day. However, right after Hiraji passed out just as Sakura ran out to help him, he's been out cold ever since. One of the students attends to Gunji, who is surprised that they're cooperating with Hiraji, but she says they can accept what he's done. Meanwhile, Tanaka says goodbye to the kids and tells them not to rat him out to the police. At the police station, the new detective in charge wonders why Hiraji is still silent, while he gets word that Yamato's lawyer was able to get him out, but there is still one more person left to arrest. Meanwhile, Yamato obsessively looks through all the hate he's getting online to the point that the room starts spinning. When he goes outside, he's swarmed by a group of reporters who try to ask him about the case, but he begins to hallucinate, causing him to hide himself. At the same time, detectives wait outside Takahiko's house while he decides to upload the fake video of Hiraji with his so-called Reina. This immediately sparks outrage at Hiraji again, while the students in the school see the news and wonder who leaked it. Hiraji finally wakes up when he gets a call from Takahiko, who informs him that he had to leave the video earlier than planned, but is glad that no one else would have to go through what Fumika and Reina did. His last words are to thank Hiraji for everything he's done for Fumika. Then he hangs up. After, he tells Fumika that he'll be going away for a while and tells her to stay strong, and though she begs him not to leave, he has no choice and walks outside to police custody, and Fumika watches as they drive him away. Back in school, the class wonders what they should do as they realize telling the truth will make them accomplices. Hiroki stares off, remembering how Hiraji had come to him to ask for the footage he had on Reina, and when he explained why, Hiroki officially became his accomplice. In the present, Hiraji returns to class, and when the students tell him about the video that's been posted, he informs them that it was always the plan. He then begins to tell them the story as well as his objectives. As he pours his heart out to the kids, they're all moved to tears yet again, and he tells them how people hurt others deeply without even realizing it. He tells them that in just these few days, they've changed so much that he hardly recognizes them, which makes him happy. He thanks them for everything and leaves the class. Then he calls the detectives and informs them he'll be taking Gunji to the rooftop. Sakura overhears and asks why he's doing that, but when he refuses to answer, she begins to beg him not to let people view him as a bad guy anymore. However, this time, Hiraji doesn't show his usual soft spot for her and just tosses her out of the way like a ragdoll. He goes to fetch Gunji with a gun and leads him out, and when Sakura asks him what and who he's fighting for, he tells her to think, then sets off a bomb that blocks her from following after him. Afterward, Hiroki approaches Sakura and tells her that when Hiraji told him about his plans, he said he would have to become the villain in the end, and it was all for Sakura. Outside, the police arrive to see Hiraji holding a gun to Gunji, while all the students watch the broadcast on their phones. However, Sakura interrupts them and says she's the one who caused Reina's death while outside. Hiraji suddenly gets shot and collapses. Immediately, a rescue team tries to head in for the children, but another bomb goes off, stopping them from advancing as they realize that Hiraji isn't dead thanks to his bulletproof vest. Hiraji announces that he'll be making a live broadcast the next day to tell everyone the truth, and should anyone try to stop him, they'll blow up the whole school. Immediately, the internet blows up again with people calling for the police to do their damn jobs and taken out while the students are relieved that Hiraji's okay. Yuzuki asks Sakura to explain herself and Sakura reaffirms that she's responsible for Reina's death, which is why Hiraji is going through so much trouble for her. At the same time, Gunji sits with Hiraji and tells him that no decent person would do this, but after seeing his students' reaction to him, he figures there's more to it and asks him why he's doing it. Hiraji then begins to tell him how Fumika was framed with a fake video, which caused her mental health to decline drastically. Because of this, Hiraji decided to join her school and expose the truth about Yamato, but before he got a chance to, he discovered he had pancreatic cancer. Still determined to finish his work, he returned to school, and that's when he discovered Hiroki with the doping video of Reina, but when he asked him about it, Hiroki said it was fake, making Hiraji realize what was going on. With this, Hiraji wiretapped Yamato's phone to confirm his suspicions. Then he told Reina he could help her because of what happened to his girlfriend. However, before he could actually do anything, Reina was found dead, which was devastating since he was always supposed to die first. Hiraji confided in Takahiko about not being able to save Reina, even though he knew Yamato was behind it. But Takahiko told him he had to be strong, so the two concocted the plan and brought Fumika's biological father into it. Together, they mapped out the school and set up the bombs in classroom. Then Hiraji recruited Hiroki and explained the plan. Hiraji also added that he did this for one of his students. At that same moment, Sakura told the rest of the class that she had been with Reina when she died. They went to the rooftop, and Sakura apologized for not sticking by her, and that her letter wasn't true. But she got interrupted by a phone call, and when Reina saw her pick up the phone, she suddenly started screaming at the air and decided she couldn't take it anymore. She hopped over the side of the roof and jumped off, but Sakura managed to catch her in time. However, Reina begged her to make it easier for her, and with that, Reina let go of her hand. Hiroki tells her not to blame herself, and though Sakura remembers Hiraji telling her the exact same thing, she says that her sin can never disappear. At the same time, Gunji says he understands Hiraji's objectives, but asks why he had to go through this just for one student. But Hiraji says that's his job as a teacher. Meanwhile, Yamato is out on the streets, hallucinating that everyone hates him and wants him to die. Back at the school, Hiraji finally returns to the roof while Sakura tells the class she believes he intends to jump off the rooftop. So they all rush to try and remove the rubble so they can get to him. At the same time, Gunji calls his partner and tells him to get Fumika to the school so she can see what Hiraji is doing. The kids continue to remove the rocks when Gunji calls out and tells them he'll help them from his end. Meanwhile, Hiraji is behind his live stream and finally reveals that the video was of him and a random school student and had nothing to do with Reina. He then confesses that the reason he has done all of this is to inform the world of the violence on social media. Since the day he started barricading himself, they've called him a terrorist, praised him as a hero, and then cast him aside again, all just depending on random unverified information leaked on the internet. Yet their vulgar words can easily end someone's life, which is what happened to Reina. She was so affected by cyberbullying that she began to hallucinate and eventually ended her life. As Hiraji continues his speech, the comments online continue to be unrepentant and hateful, but Hiraji doesn't back down from telling them to be more self-aware. Meanwhile, Fumika arrives on the scene, and the students finally break through the rubble to go see him. Once Hiraji is done with his speech, he goes over to the ledge and tries to fall off, but Reina manages to catch his hand. When he tells her to let go to make it easier for him, she refuses and holds on tight, while the other students come up behind her and help get him to safety. With this, Hiraji shows her that she would never let go of someone in need, and Sakura finally admits that Reina actually slipped from her, and she never intended to let go. In tears once again, Hiraji tells his students that this is finally the end of his lesson. Downstairs, Yamato approaches Fumika and apologizes for being scum of the earth, so she forgives him and tells him she'll continue to be strong. Hiraji finally gets arrested and on his way. Fumika thanks him for everything, while the rest of the students watch as he's taken away. Years later, the students all returned to school to celebrate Hiraji's 3rd anniversary. And to celebrate, Hiroki finally shows them his documentary on Reina and her happy moments with the rest of the class, especially Sakura, then everything that happened after the doping incident. When they're done, the whole class heads out while Sakura stays behind and talks to Hiraji's picture. Since the incident, most people live their lives like nothing happened, but for her, those 10 days were the springtime of her life, and if the feelings could reach her and her classmates, they hopefully were able to reach others too. If you enjoyed this video, comment, let's think down below. See you in the next one.